Chapter 1. Introduction. One family is directly intertwined in the coup against Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie I and the culture war and musical coup against reggae music and its message. They are ultimately tied to the intrigues around the assassination of Haile Selassie. The father oversaw and directed the coup of Ethiopia. Him and/or his associates ran the political destabilization and propaganda campaigns in Jamaica, as well as the gun and drug running. They are most likely tied to the assassination attempt on Bob Marley, and it would be no surprise to find their fingerprints on Bob's early death. If that wasn't enough, the sons are generals of the culture war against reggae, where they directly replace reggae with an emasculated pop version rendered meaningless, successfully dismembering the head of consciousness from the musical form itself. That family is the Copelands. The father, Miles Axe Copeland II, was an original founding member of the CIA, and self-proclaims to be the first CIA agent involved in the quote-unquote dirty tricks business. He was the director of coups against Syria, Iran, and many other countries, and created the Egyptian version of the CIA. When the CIA wasn't aggressive or lucrative enough for his taste, he went private and formed his own privatized CIA, where his clients were the biggest oil men and arms dealers in the world. The three sons all ran and controlled every aspect of the post-punk 1980s new wave music scene. Miles Copeland III formed IRS Records, International Record Syndicate, managed the Police and Sting's later solo career, as well as many other bands, gatekept the punk rock scene, and would later be a direct Pentagon advisor on how to win the hearts and minds of the Arab world through music and culture after the invasion of Iraq. The second son, Stewart Copeland, became the drummer of the Police, probably the central band responsible for the white appropriation of reggae and who were made into international superstars overnight, while Sting the actor stole Bob Marley's chops while releasing an album titled Reggae de Blanc, or White Reggae. The Police, in classic colonial fashion, took the best of the resources they found and trashed all the essence of the meaning and people they took it from. All essence of roots reggae biblical message and the second coming of Jesus Christ was replaced with stories of prostitutes, underage attraction, walking on the moon, and suicide. The third son, Ian Copeland, after serving as a volunteered war hero in Vietnam with no experience, begins running FBI booking agency, Frontier Booking International, a startup talent agency who, against all odds, takes over the majors and quickly rises to be a behemoth in the industry and represents almost every new wave band in existence. It would later represent a slew of actors and bands from all genres. Ian Copeland is credited with coining the term new wave itself. Biblical spiritual music has always been suppressed and kept separate from the popular music consciousness and pop music charts. Gospel music was never allowed to cross over, and the best gospel artists like Sam Cooke and Aretha Franklin were forced to transition into secular music to have careers. These artists would often take gospel melodies and traditional church songs and replace the lyrics about God into being about a girlfriend or boyfriend, romantic love, or sexual lust as opposed to devotional love. This is the same blueprint the new wave bands used on reggae. Instead of Bob Marley singing of Christ being the rightful ruler of earth, biblical prophecy being at hand, the fall of Babylon, the healing of the nations, and African unity, the radio pumped out Roxanne and Eric Clapton's version of I Shot the Sheriff, which he would follow up with inspired songs like Cocaine. Ethiopia was the only African country never to be colonized. Emperor Haile Selassie I claimed descendancy from the biblical kings of David and Solomon with his bloodline through Solomon and Sheba. His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I was viewed by the Rasta community in Jamaica as the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, and conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, and as the manifest second coming of Jesus Christ in his kingly character. Prophecy fulfilled. It is strange that this aspect is never really addressed, and people don't strongly refute or support it in general, they just ignore it. The meaning, though, is paramount. Whether you believe or not, to have a voice from the so-called third world so fervently preaching that the Bible's last days are here and Christ has returned, that God is in Africa and the world must be united, you can see how this message is threatening to the status quo, let alone if any of it is true. Well, then you have a real problem, don't you? What is certain is that Miles Axe Copeland Jr. was the director and conductor who successfully orchestrated and executed the most important coups d'etats in world history. He is a geopolitical monopoly game master. Yes, he was provided with all the house money and all the assets and most of the properties on the board before the game began, but he still masterminded an unbelievable slew of government takeovers in the most sensitive and difficult regions in the world, ultimately recruiting the main players in the Ethiopian operation, like putting together a fabricated rock band, On September 12, 1974, Copeland quote-unquote artist, the Derg, toppled and deposed Haile Selassie and took over the Ethiopian government in a military coup. 2 days later, on September 14, 1974, Eric Clapton's I Shot the Sheriff, in a moment of ultimate insult to injury, hits number 1. Selassie would be imprisoned in the imperial palace at that time and later assassinated. Though they claimed natural causes when his death was announced in August of 1975, it was later revealed Selassie had been murdered through strangulation, and in further blasphemous insult to injury, his remains were buried beneath a toilet on the palace grounds. Those remains were discovered 17 years later in 1995 and finally given a proper burial in the year 2000. It is often implied that the CIA had quote-unquote something to do with the death of Bob Marley, or at minimum the shooting assassination attempt on his life in December of 1976. However, the previous stated facts of CIA involvement in Selassie's death are almost never discussed. When it comes to Bob's death, the story has always been filled with misinformation and a general story that didn't make much sense. Originally, it was said that Bob had been playing soccer football barefoot versus a player who was wearing metal spike cleats, that the metal spike pierced Bob's bare toe, and that because he didn't believe in doctors, he never had it looked at and it turned cancerous. After many years, there was an added revised fact that it was more melanoma than the toe injury which led to Bob's cancerous death. Or somehow the toe injury turned melanoma. The added extra insult in this version is that they blame the whiteness in Bob for killing him and not any military intelligence plot. There is one story in the biography, Catch a Fire, which claims Bob was given a gift of a pair of boots right after or right around the Smile Jamaica concert, the same time of the shooting assassination attempt in December of 1976. That this gift was given by Carl Colby, the son of the head of the CIA at the time, William Colby. Carl just happened to be in Jamaica filming a documentary on the concert. The story goes that Bob put the boots on, cried out in some pain, and that an exposed metal or copper rod was in the boot, which has led to speculation and conspiracy theories that Bob was somehow given a fast-acting cancer through the boot. All of that aside, what is facts is that Bob Marley was handed over to a quote-unquote ex-Nazi doctor who had already been charged with fraud and malpractice in 1961, named Joseph Issels, and was given experimental treatments, aka tortured, for the last 6 to 8 months of his life. He was taken to Bavaria, the original headquarters of the actual Illuminati, and he was tortured until he attempted to flee to Jamaica before his impending passing. He never made it. The flight home had to make an emergency detour in Miami, where Bob passed. These are fingerprints. These are facts. What also is fact is that Bob Marley died as a Christian, having been baptized in the Ethiopian Orthodox Christian Church as Bernhain Selassie, or Light of the Trinity. That was after having prolonged contact and interaction with Selassie's family directly in Africa and being given Selassie's Lion of Judah ring, which you can see him wearing on the cover of his greatest hits album, Legend. The Copelands blatantly advertised that they were the IRS, the FBI, and the CIA, Copeland International Arts, of the music industry. That their band was the police of the scene. They didn't hide that their father was a founding member of the CIA, and in fact, they outwardly praised his actions in their interviews. Miles Copeland, the father, concluded a Rolling Stone interview in 1986 by, quote, implying that the police were a psyops outfit who played shows to, quote, 70,000 young minds open to whatever the police decide to put into them, end quote. They inverted the message of reggae, and Sting became a New Age tantric guru. All three Copeland brothers promoted degeneracy and nonsense, while successfully corralling both punk and reggae, and gatekeeping which artists got careers. Were they alone? Of course not. It's bigger than just them on both the political and musical fronts, but it is through the Copelands that we get the clearest and most direct picture of military intelligence involvement in the story of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie, reggae music, Bob Marley, and the importance of controlling the hearts and minds of the masses. Thank you for tuning in and watching Real Music History. This episode was Chapter 1, the introduction to the series Rasta Don't Work for No CIA. There's a lot more details to follow, more stories to tell, so subscribe to the channel, like the video, and get notified of each new drop. I'd love to hear your thoughts and insights on this story, so please comment below. God bless you. Live up.